Welcome to the PREcast, the Presearch Community Podcast. So hi everyone, and welcome to the very first episode of the PREcast. My name is Catherine, and today we get to interview the amazing Sasha Hodder, who is, among many other things, a crypto attorney, but she will tell us more in a second. Hi Sasha, and thanks for taking the time. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Oh, hi Catherine. Thank you so much. I'm honored to be your first guest.
Thank you. Okay, so let's get right into it then. First off, please give us a little introduction to yourself. Tell us about your current professions, projects, and passions, including, of course, your own Hoddercast, if you like.
Okay, sure. Thank you. Well, I work as a partner at World Block Legal. So it's a law firm based in Tampa, Florida that my friend Greg Karch and I founded together in February of 2018. And it's been really fun working solely in the crypto environment. Before, both of us were at two different firms where we were getting a lot of clients that wanted legal services on crypto, and the firms weren't overly eager to dive into that area of the law. So now it's all we focus on, and we've got to really get to know a lot of exciting projects on the go, and meet a lot of great people that are involved in the movement. So that's been a lot of fun. And yeah, you mentioned my Hoddercast. It's just, as I'm exploring new legal topics around the blockchain, I've started writing a blog. Basically, I started it more for my own reference, or anyone else that's getting into the crypto legal space, that they could have some kind of resource, because a lot of times the questions I come across, I can't find the answers really easily on the internet, where traditional fields of law, you type it in and there's hundreds of
yes.
Yeah. So then turned it into a little like a video blog and a podcast. And I on top of, I think the some of the legal stuff, it might be interesting for the handful of other attorneys out there, but for the general public it might be kind of boring. So I try and scatter in some interviews with other people that are into crypto as well, to kind of make it more interesting. But it's fun. It's my side project. Yeah.
Well, that sounds really great, and I have to say I've listened to it, and it's pretty awesome. So I would highly recommend that our listeners check it out.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, so as for my first question, and this is something that I like to ask everyone in the space, is when and how did you first get interested in the whole blockchain and cryptocurrency space? And especially also, what made you stay? So what aspects of the concepts behind cryptocurrencies made you go from Sasha Hodder to Sasha Hodler, like it says on your website, which I think is really funny. So how did you become a true crypto believer?
Well, so before, when I first got interested in crypto, I was working as a vice president of sales for a mutual fund company in Canada, Northwest and Ethical Investments. And one of our portfolio managers, Christine Hughes, she talked a lot about macroeconomics and the problems with the quantitative easing that was going on in that time frame. It was around 2011 to 13 that I was working under her. Well, I was selling her mutual fund, basically. So she actually introduced Bitcoin to her audience in 2011, or whenever it was. The price of Bitcoin was $11, and it was the first I ever heard of it then. And I everything she said, I took very literally, and she was a really great mentor. And so I continued to follow it, and always felt like I was missing out because I didn't know how to buy it or to get involved. And I joined some local meetups in Canada, but I was always traveling and I never actually went to them. So I was just in the online community with it. And then I think it was probably 2013, I heard Andreas Antonopoulos speak on the Joe Rogan podcast, the first one he did. And that was when I really, like, Andreas just has such a beautiful way of laying it out, and the, excitement behind him and passion, and the idea that this is something that's really going to be transformative, to not just the developed world, but more so the people who don't have access to bank accounts right now, and just what it can mean having a bank in your cell phone. So then I still didn't buy in yet, and the price kept climbing really quickly, up to $1,000. And then I moved from Canada to the United States to start my law school journey, and I was looking for part-time work. So I thought, well, why don't I try and get involved with crypto this way? And, I can learn from people that are actually involved with it. So I started working as a compliance officer for a Bitcoin ATM company, Coin Outlet, and through there, that's when I started getting paid in Bitcoin, and I started learning all about it. It was a real challenge at that time because Bitcoin hadn't yet been classified as the property classification came out shortly after I started working for them. So then it was a question of whether selling Bitcoin at an ATM machine, is that like the same as a vending machine transaction when someone buys a bag of chips when they buy Bitcoin, or is it the same as, is it money transmission, which involves a whole, licensing process with FinCEN. And so, that determination, and it's a state by state analysis. That was kind of what I started off working on. So it was a good introduction. And I guess what made me the believer is just, I started going to conferences and started listening to all these different people speaking about it, and just saw the excitement behind it all. Like, there were so many very smart people working on this, all the time. And every conference you go to, you see more and more developments coming, and it's just moving so quickly. Like one week in Bitcoin world is like a year in traditional business. So I just love it.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. It's moving so fast and nonstop and around the clock. It's pretty crazy, yeah. But yeah, that's great. And I love that you mentioned Andreas Antonopoulos, because I'm a huge fan, and I recently got the chance to meet him at a developers conference. So that was pretty great.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and he's such an amazing human being, and he is so humble and down to earth, and he really believes in his mission, and that's great. So yeah, I get where you're coming from, is what I'm trying to say. Okay, so you're a crypto lawyer. So obviously, I want to know your thoughts on the current situation regarding regulations. I mean, obviously, it's going to be a bit of an American theme here, but maybe also internationally. And what would you say are the biggest challenges on the one hand, but maybe also the biggest opportunities when it comes to law and regulations versus blockchain and cryptocurrencies?
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I can answer more from the American perspective, but I think that the American perspective kind of applies to a lot of people that at least want to sell to America, because if they want this giant market that's here, they have to apply, like conform to the American laws, or just block all American investors, which makes a fundraising campaign kind of difficult. So the way that I see it, and the way I'm advising my clients around the ICO space is, well, I guess we should back up a little and look at, when we say regulation, there's a lot of different forms of regulation for Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, and they're all different. Like Bitcoin itself, I think one of the best features about it, and one of the things that I was most excited for with Bitcoin, is that you can't regulate it. It's it's beyond regulation. If people are using private wallets and not using exchanges, it is still, you are able to be anonymous with it. And although there are a lot of developments from companies like Chainalysis and different organizations working to destroy the anonymity that exists with Bitcoin, if someone has been very careful with how they're operating like using just Bitcoin, then because of its decentralized nature, it's still regulatory resistance, I guess. If you're using anonymous wallets, there's not really an easy way for someone like the IRS to know whose wallet is whose. But the IRS has come out and said that it's taxable like property back in 2014. And in Canada, I believe they haven't actually called it property yet, so it's not something that's actively being taxed. And then in America, the SEC, who governs securities, have come out. They haven't actually made a formal, like, there's been no case law that has said that an ICO, so an initial coin offering, now those are different than Bitcoin because they're done from an organization. It's not this anonymous group of computers that, you know, move the currency back and forth. It's one centralized organization usually, and they can try and be as decentralized as possible, but there's usually people behind it, whereas Bitcoin has, you know, the anonymous Satoshi Nakamoto behind it. And it wasn't sold, it was mined. So all the other coins that are mined, they're considered a different entity than the ones that are sold through an initial coin offering. So if the coin is mined, it's in America governed by the CFTC. I think, like, nothing is exactly clear on this. This is just what you can get from different statements coming out from various regulators. But since there's been no case yet to determine it, this is my take on it, is that if it's mined, it's not going to be a security, it's a commodity. But if it's sold through an initial coin offering, that creates an investment contract that would make it a security. And the hallmarks of a security are something that the person who buys it believes it's going to go up in value based on the efforts of a third party. So if you're buying this ICO token thinking it's going to increase in value based on the company's work, then that creates that it's a security. And selling securities in America has a lot of restrictions on it. One being that you either have to register it and do it as an initial public offering, like on the stock market, which involves typically $1 million of legal fees or more. And you have to have a lot of financials. Like, you can't just be a startup and get on the stock market. So then if you do it as a private placement, which is the typical way that ICOs are starting to go, you would do it as a Regulation D exemption from registration, and then you have to limit it to accredited investors and lock the tokens up for a year. So that creates a lot of challenges to cryptocurrency companies because you don't want the tokens locked up for a year, and you want everyone to be able to participate, not just accredited investors who are millionaires or have income of over 200,000 the last 2 years. So until we get some kind of definite thing on how to determine whether something is a security or not, there's a lot of companies still operating under the idea that their token is a utility token and then therefore not subject to the securities laws. But I think that's a fairly risky thing to do if your company is not fully up and running. If it's something like a game that it's fully operational and the users contribute a big part to the project. So if it's something that's decentralized and every person is every person's use of it or contribution to it is helping with the development, then you can maybe get away from the fourth prong of the Howey test, which is that you're expecting the growth to come solely from the efforts of a third party. So there's a lot of nuances to it, but it's I'm not taking that risk for any of my clients. We're just doing the Regulation D until there's more guidelines on it. But I think in other countries, and I have registered some in other countries where we just block America, and then you can do that, right, the utility token where the person does the ICO by taking in some form of cryptocurrency, usually Bitcoin or Ethereum, and then issuing tokens, and raising money that way. So some jurisdictions, and I think Canada is one of those, that you don't have to follow all those securities law protocols because they haven't come out and said that these tokens are actually securities. So it's quite a interesting landscape, I guess, because every country is doing it differently, and I think it's going to lead to some countries becoming leaders in the space and other countries that are slower with the regulation, falling behind. So yeah, I guess hopefully that answers the question. I maybe went off on a bit of a tangent there on the ICOs, but I think that is the biggest challenge right now, is the ICO market, or at least it's the main thing coming across my desk.
No, absolutely. Great summary. I mean, this is such a complex, topic, and that was a pretty great summary, I think. And I guess if I'd have to sum it up, there is like two, one could say, main issues here. Is that first of all, you're kind of trying to apply old rules to new mediums, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And there are no new rules yet, or they're in the process of being created as we speak, right? Mm-hmm. And the other thing is that you have like cryptocurrencies and blockchains are per definition, international, or they're non-national. They're borderless, if you will, and regulations are always something that's happening on a national level for the most part, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we'll see. It's just very exciting times, and I have to say I admire the crypto lawyers, because I guess in the law space, this is still very, very new, and I think you have to be quite courageous to actually take that on. So kudos. No, really. Okay, so we've talked about the state now, and I'd also like to hear your thoughts on where do you think we're headed in the next, let's say, 5 years when it comes to everything that we've just talked about, like regulations. That's one thing. And also, I would like to know what your colleagues in the law community think about cryptocurrencies. How do they feel about it in your experience? What is their attitude towards it?
Well, I guess I can answer that in two parts. So the first one, as to where we're going in 5 years, I think what we're going to see is a lot more decentralized projects that don't fall in any jurisdiction, or people become more and more innovative of how to avoid being in one, in the negative jurisdictions, or the jurisdictions that aren't as friendly to cryptocurrency. And, the decentralized exchanges, I think we heard recently Binance is coming out in Malta with a decentralized exchange, and there's already some, on Counterparty, there's already a decentralized exchange. And when you have no one to go after, it's pretty hard to sue someone on it. So from a regulatory perspective, I think companies are going to start really treating that as the highest priority when they're forming the business. And I hope I'm not coming off, anti-establishment or anything like that, suggesting that everything is decentralized, because, there have been a lot of scams in this environment, and it maybe in one sense good to have regulation to hold some of those people accountable. But I think in this community, we have a lot, the regulations are there to protect the mom and pop investors who get maybe swindled by, I think back in the 80s, anyone that saw Wolf of Wall Street, like that kind of environment of people calling with high pressured sales pitches and things like that. We're not seeing the company's sales practices that I've seen haven't been that aggressive. And the people that they're reaching are people that are already into cryptocurrency. Like there's no way to go on and easily just buy into these ICOs. You have to know what you're doing. And I think by knowing what you're doing, you kind of take on the risk yourself. So I think that the decentralized way of doing it is a better model for crypto companies going forward. And in the next 5 years, I really hope we see a big takeoff with cryptocurrency for the people that are unbanked right now. And we see more adoption of being able to buy things with cryptocurrency. Everywhere I go, I always ask just to kind of be funny, like if I'm paying for my parking or at restaurants. It's probably annoying to the people, but I say, oh, can I pay with Bitcoin? And everyone always tells me no, or gives me a funny look. And I think in 5 years that'll be more normal that we can pay for things with cryptocurrency, or I certainly hope so. And then in terms of how the colleagues in the law community feel about cryptocurrency, well, last week I had the opportunity to give a presentation to the Florida real estate attorneys, the Florida Board of Bar Examiner group for real estate attorneys, and they were not very welcoming. And it was kind of interesting to me because it was the first time in the last 6 months, I've been so engrossed in the crypto community that I haven't really talked to a whole lot of people outside of it. All my clients are in crypto, my coworkers and my family, all my friends pretty much. It's a lot. I'm surrounded by believers. And then all of a sudden I'm at this conference and getting all these questions about how the blockchain can be hacked and, reminding me about tulips and stuff. And I was surprised.
Yeah.
Thought everyone was, excited about this. And I think a lot of people maybe are afraid of it, or afraid that it's going to take their jobs over, or just, if it's something new. Like, people probably complained about the internet before it came, or, if you're a fan of Andreas, you've probably heard him talk about when automobiles were created, and someone had to walk in front of the automobile in London with a red flag because they called them pedestrian killers. And
yeah.
But I think it's kind of like that right now with Bitcoin. Like, people just, if they don't fully understand it, they might be a little afraid of it. And then same thing with the last firm I worked at. I had, because I had been working for the ATM company the previous couple of years, and gone to several conferences, I kept getting new clients in that wanted me to work on their crypto project as soon as I got licensed as an attorney. And my old boss, he wasn't comfortable with me working on those projects under his firm's name. So it was kind of, I found that surprising too, or a little, well, he just said, this is what we're focused on. And it was insurance law, and, crypto wasn't that focus. So he didn't want to move into it, which, everyone has their specialties. So, but I found that interesting too. He did let us take payment in cryptocurrency for a few clients, like a few small projects that I worked on. But it wasn't something he wanted to move into. And I know my partner, Greg, faced the same thing at his former firm too. So I think unless you're one of these, people that are entrenched in the community, you don't like it, or a lot of them, their general attitude might be one of avoidance rather than adoption.
I see. Yeah, that's actually pretty much what I thought. And also, I really had to laugh because when you said that you ask if you can pay with Bitcoin everywhere, like I do the same thing, right? And I do think it annoys people, but yeah, I think it's just a way to raise awareness and spread the message, and just to get people, to get curious about it, right? Mm-hmm. And yeah, the tulip thing.
Sorry, 1 second.
That's fine. No problem.
I should have put that on silent. My bad.
Yeah, I that's an issue. Like I was pretty afraid that my cat is gonna meow, one of my cats, but they're sleeping, so all good. Yeah, but back to the topic. So the whole tulip thing, right? Actually, the tulip bubble wasn't a tulip bubble either, right? So just to get that out of the way, and I will link the article that proves that in the description. So everyone.
Oh yes, please.
I think you'll like it. It's a great article. Yeah, but I think it's just this psychological issue. What you said, like if you don't know something, you're easily scared of it, right? And I think that's what's happening with with a lot of people, also lawyers.
Mhm.
So my next question is probably especially interesting to Europeans. So shout out to all the European listeners. Because in your latest article, you talked about the European GDPR, so the General Data Protection Regulations, right? Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so as of May 25th, it went into action that anyone that's dealing with any European clients or collecting data from any European clients had to give their whole data protection policy an overhaul, and it was kind of tough. There's also penalties, for not complying with this, and some of the main points of it were just that if you're collecting data, the person has to know exactly what you're collecting, why you're collecting it, who you're giving it to, whether you're selling it, and they have to have a way to opt out of it. So if they were a previous client of yours and they're no longer a client, they can ask you to delete all of the data that you have on them, and you have to do so. And then there's a difference if you're the company but you hire someone else to control the data or give anyone any access to the data, that person has to comply with it as well. And I think what was happening was sometimes companies that were given the data, like a secondary company that was maybe sending out emails on your behalf or marketing material on your behalf and would have this whole email list, would be going on and selling that email list to other people that might be interested in it. And that has to stop according to the GDPR. So I think it's a step in the right direction for sure. Not all my clients thought so. Like it was they have to,
Yeah.
it's a little bit cumbersome to try and overhaul your data. Even if they weren't selling it, they had to update their privacy policies and take a real good look at how they're managing the data. But I think it's an important thing to be looking at too, especially after we see things like the breach at Equifax and I mean there's a lot of breaches of data all over the place. And Europe is so different from America with their data protection. Even before this, like they for when we're doing the AML KYC stuff, you can't collect a passport or a driver's license from a European person. Like that, it's just against the law there. In certain areas you're not allowed collecting that information off them. It's too sensitive. So I like the way they do it.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I'm sure that it's annoying for a lot of companies, but it does have its perks, right? So yeah.
And if it's sensitive data, like something to do with the criminal nature or health nature, they have to hire someone who's been trained in data management to manage that data. So I think
Oh,
that
okay.
that's a good step too.
Yes, yes, absolutely, absolutely, definitely. Um, okay, so my next question is something that I also really like to ask people because, a lot of times you hear people say, well, I don't care if anybody gets my data because I ain't got nothing to hide. So
Mhm.
my question would be, why do you think we need decentralized and transparent alternatives like Presearch, for example? Um, and how would you convince people that privacy and data protection actually matter?
Well, um, it's just mind-boggling to me to think that one entity like Google or Facebook, they have so much data on us, and they make a lot, they can, who knows exactly what they're doing with the data. We just have to trust them that that they're using it effectively. But if you look on the ads and everything, they're so specifically geared to us that it's I just think no one, it's nobody's business what we're searching all the time or every keyword that we put in. And whether we're searching for illegal stuff or not, like that, it just shouldn't be like. That's, I think, what a lot of people say is, oh, I'm not doing anything illegal, so who cares. But why should they be able to make so much money off of our searches by selling whatever clicks we're going on? And then when you have a decentralized search engine, it's open, it's transparent, and it gives the person searching a way to actually use their own data to earn tokens. So that's such a better model in my opinion. And then, it gives the ability to fund new projects, or just a much better overall ecosystem than, the way it is right now, with us searching and one or two companies getting all the benefit from it. And if whether you're, I just hate the idea of whatever, every single thing that you look up, like what if you're having a health issue and you want to search about natural cures for that, then Google knows that you had that health issue, and that can come back and play 10 years later. Or if someone breaches it, then they find out, or it's just dangerous.
No, I absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. And after all, like I always refer to the Cypherpunk manifesto, where it says privacy is not secrecy, right? Those are two different things.
Yeah.
So yeah, I couldn't agree more, Sasha. So for my last question, and this is a little bit of a tricky one, I would like to ask you, what do you think? Do the lawyers of the future, will they actually have to be able to code to, for example, provide smart contracts for things like wills and inheritances and stuff like that? Do you see that for the future?
I don't know. I think there'll be a lot of resistance of people not wanting to learn to code to do those things. But what I think might happen is that the way that, when originally we had to build websites, people needed to code to build them. And now you can go on things like Squarespace, or, it's pretty easy to make a website without knowing how to code because the code is behind it. So I think maybe some kind of technology like that will be created where the lawyer can type in the words, and then those words will be transferred into a smart contract on the back end that the lawyer doesn't have to see. But I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. So kind of like the WordPress of prenups.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think actually some projects are already working on this. But yeah, I agree. But I think it will take a lot of time to get there. So.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, there's still going to have to be some way to litigate over things. Like, I don't think we'll just, end all disputes with smart contracts, although we might be able to alleviate a lot of it with, if everything's predetermined and it just goes one way or the other, at the happening of a certain event. I still think people will try and litigate over other issues, so there'll still need to be lawyers involved somehow. Or lawyers trying their own path in it so that they don't get cut off.
Absolutely. No, we still need lawyers. Lawyers are important. Okay. Well, I could go on forever, I guess, but I think at this point we should wrap it up for today. And I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time and joining us today. It was very interesting, and I learned a lot of new stuff. So thank you so much, Sasha.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for all the work you guys are doing over at Presearch. It's, very innovative, and I think possibly life-changing for the way that we interact with the internet. So I'm looking forward to watching you guys as you keep developing.
Oh, thank you so much. That's so nice. Yeah, everyone in the team is really working very hard, and it's a great community. So we're very excited.
It's one of the most active chats on all of Telegram that I can see. So you're obviously doing something right to get the community involved now, and everyone's excited about it.
Yes, absolutely. It's amazing. Like we just hit 150K beta users, which is absolutely mind-blowing. So yeah, it's very exciting, and I'm very much looking forward to the future. So yeah. Oh, and also, of course, since we talked about it before, if anyone wants to listen to Sasha's Holocast, which I highly recommend, I will link it in the description, and also the GDPR article, and all of our social media profiles, because you're very active on there too. So leave a like or a retweet or whatever if you feel like it. And yeah, again, Sasha, thank you so much. Greatly appreciate it. And yeah, have a nice day, everyone. And goodbye.
You too. Thanks, Catherine.
Thank you. Bye. If you liked this episode, then please subscribe. And if you want to stay updated on everything Presearch, be sure to follow our social media channels. The links are in the description.